The mashed potatoes were perfect, creamy, butter-heavy, and seasoned with the rosemary I'd grown in the windowsill pot. It was my mother's 56th birthday, and the dining room smelled like roasted chicken and expensive candles. I was mid-sip of water when my father set his fork down. The silver clinked against the china with a finality that made the hair on my neck stand up. "Alyssa," he said, his voice as casual as if he were discussing the weather or the local sports scores. "We've been looking at the floor plan for the second floor. With Sarah's pregnancy moving into the third trimester, they're going to need the extra space. We've decided you'll need to have your things cleared out of your room by Saturday. Damien needs the primary suite layout for the nursery transition." I didn't choke, though I wanted to. I carefully set my glass down, watching a single bead of condensation track its way toward the tablecloth. I am Alyssa, the daughter who stayed. I am the one who didn't travel the world or find myself on a mountain in Bali. I stayed to hold the walls of this house together while they crumbled. My room wasn't just a room. It was the converted attic suite I had spent $15,000 of my own money renovating 3 years ago when I moved back to help them with the mortgage. By Saturday, I repeated. The word felt heavy, like a stone in my mouth. "It just makes sense," Damien added, not looking up from his plate. He was busy carving a thick slice of chicken. Damien, my older brother, the perennial wanderer who had returned home 6 months ago with a pregnant wife and a vision for a startup that had yet to see a single line of code. "The light up there is better for the baby. Plus, Sarah needs the ensuite bathroom. You're just one girl, Al. You can take the basement sofa or find a studio in the city. It's time to be a team player." My mother smiled, that tight, performative smile she used when she wanted to bypass a conflict she had already decided the winner of. "We've already bought the mint green paint, honey. It's going to be so darling. You don't mind, do you? It's for your nephew." The injustice wasn't the request, it was the delivery. It was the fact that they were asking me to vacate a space I paid market rate rent for. A space I had rebuilt with my own hands so that my brother could continue his life of subsidized leisure. They weren't asking. They were informing the help that her quarters had been reassigned. I had moved back during the height of the inflation crisis. At the time, my parents were drowning. My father's consultancy had dried up. And the house, the big, drafty Victorian that had been in our family for 2 generations, was weeks away from a short sale. I stepped in. I didn't just pay rent, I covered the property taxes. I fixed the leaking roof. I spent my weekends rewiring the ancient electrical system so the house wouldn't burn down. I did the invisible things. I was the one who knew exactly which jiggle the toilet handle needed to stop running. I was the one who tracked the heating oil levels and negotiated with the providers. I was the one who spent 4 hours every Sunday meal prepping for the week so my mother wouldn't have to stress about her blood sugar. While Damien was off networking in various coastal cities, I was the one holding the flashlight in the crawl space. Then Damien arrived. Damien didn't pay rent. Damien contributed to the energy of the home. When he and Sarah moved into the guest room, the household dynamics shifted instantly. Suddenly, the groceries I bought were communal property, but the organic snacks Sarah wanted were off limits. Damien would leave his dishes in the sink for days, claiming he was too deep in a flow state with his business plan to notice mundane chores. "He's going through a transition, Alyssa," my mother would say whenever I pointed out the mountain of laundry he'd left in the shared machine. "He's going to be a father. He needs our support, not our judgment. You're so stable, dear. You can handle a little extra on your plate." The hypocrisy was a physical weight. I would come home from a 10-hour shift at the architectural firm, only to find Damien lounging on the porch, sipping a beer I had paid for, talking about how the grind was a mental prison. Meanwhile, I was the one grinding to ensure the light stayed on. The golden child syndrome wasn't new, but it had reached a fever pitch. Sarah's pregnancy had turned her into a protected entity, and Damien was her self-appointed guard, exempt from all earthly responsibilities. My role had been downgraded from daughter and savior of the family home to temporary tenant who was overstaying her welcome. I looked around the table. My father was already talking to Damien about the best way to mount a crib. They hadn't even asked where I would go. They didn't care. To them, I was a utility, a faucet that produced money and labor. And they assumed the faucet would keep running even if they moved it to the basement. Actually, I said, my voice cutting through Damien's description of a high-tech baby monitor. Saturday won't work. My father frowned. Alyssa, don't be difficult. We've already hired the painters for Monday. We're trying to be fair here. We'll even let you skip next month's rent to help with your moving costs into the basement. A compromise. He was offering me the privilege of living in a windowless, damp basement on a pull-out couch in exchange for the suite I had built and the mortgage I was largely carrying. You misunderstood, I said, standing up. The chair scraped against the hardwood floor, a sharp, jarring sound that finally silenced the table. I won't be moving to the basement, and I won't be clearing out by Saturday. Damien rolled his eyes. Here we go. The drama. Look, if you want more money for the renovation you did, we can talk about a payment plan once the startup. I don't want your money, Damien. You don't have any, I said calmly. I turned to my father. The lease I had you sign when I moved back wasn't just for my protection, Dad. It was for yours. But since you've decided to terminate our arrangement without the required 60-day notice, I'm going to make this very simple for everyone. What are you talking about? My mother asked, her voice trembling slightly. I'm leaving, I said. Tonight. I've already secured a small apartment near the office. I was going to tell you next month, but this dinner has been very illuminating. Tonight? My father laughed, though it sounded forced. Don't be ridiculous. You can't move tonight. Who's going to help me with the winterizing? Who's going to handle the tax filing for the property? Not me, I said. I felt a strange, cool lightness spreading through my chest. And since I won't be here, I'll be withdrawing my name from the joint account we use for the mortgage and utilities. As of midnight, the house is entirely your responsibility again. The silence that followed was absolute. The mic drop wasn't a shout or a slammed door. It was the quiet realization on my father's face as the math began to settle in his head. He looked at Damien, who was still holding a forkful of chicken, and then back at me. You can't just walk out on your family, Damien snapped, his face reddening. That's selfish. We have a baby coming. Exactly, I said, heading toward the stairs. You have a baby coming. I suggest you start figuring out how to pay for it. My things are already packed in the attic. I'll have the movers here by 8 p.m. Alyssa, my mother called out, her voice pitching higher. Who's going to fix the boiler? It started making that knocking sound again this morning. I paused at the base of the stairs and looked back. I'm sure Damien's flow state includes a working knowledge of HVAC systems. Happy birthday, Mom. The first week was the hardest, not because I missed them, but because of the silence. I had moved into a 400-square-foot studio. It was small, and the radiator hissed like a disgruntled cat, but every inch of it belonged to me. No one was eating my food. No one was asking me to pay for things they could afford if they just tried. Then the messages started. It began with my father. Alyssa, how do you log into the property tax portal? They sent a late notice, and the password you gave me isn't working. I didn't reply. I had given him the password 3 times over the last year. It was in a folder on his desk labeled House. If he couldn't find it, that wasn't my burden anymore. Then came the labor gap realization. 2 weeks in, Damien called me 6 times in a row. I finally answered, thinking it was a medical emergency with Sarah. The basement is flooding, he hissed, sounding panicked. The sump pump stopped working. There's 2 inches of water near the furnace. You need to come over and show me how to reset the float switch. Call a plumber, Damien, I said, leaning back in my thrift store armchair. A plumber is $300 just to show up. You always did it for free. I didn't do it for free, I corrected him. I did it as part of my contribution to a home I was welcomed in. I'm no longer a resident. Good luck with the water. I hung up. I could picture it. My father standing over the water with a flashlight, confused by the machinery I had maintained for years. My mother crying because the dampness was ruining the boxes of darling baby clothes she'd stored downstairs. Damien, the man who wanted the primary suite, realizing that the suite was part of a living, breathing organism that required constant care. They didn't miss me. They didn't miss my stories, my presence, or my humor. They missed the invisible Alyssa. They missed the girl who changed the light bulbs they couldn't reach. They missed the one who knew that the backyard gate needed an extra lift to latch properly so the neighbor's dog wouldn't get in. They missed the buffer I provided between them and the harsh reality of owning a home they couldn't afford and didn't know how to run. A month later, a photo appeared on my mother's Facebook. It was the nursery. They had painted it mint green, just as they'd planned. But in the background, I could see the signs of decay. There was a water stain on the ceiling from the roof leak I had warned them about, the one I was supposed to fix that weekend I moved out. Sarah looked exhausted, sitting in a rocking chair that I knew had a broken runner. They were living in the palace they had reclaimed from me, but without the servant who kept the palace standing, it was just a drafty, expensive box of problems. My new life was humbler, yes. My view was a brick wall and a slice of the fire escape. I ate my dinner on a folding table, and I had to walk 3 blocks to do my laundry. But for the first time in years, I woke up without a mental to-do list for other people. I didn't have to worry about Damien's ego or my mother's manipulative sighs. I wasn't the reliable daughter who existed to make everyone else's life frictionless, at the expense of my own. One Tuesday evening, my father called. He didn't ask for help with the taxes or the boiler. His voice was tired, stripped of the casual authority he'd wielded at the birthday dinner. "Alyssa," he said, "we're thinking of selling the house. It's too much for us. Damien and Sarah are moving into her parents' place. They need more support." He waited. I knew what he wanted. He wanted me to swoop in. He wanted me to say, "Don't sell it. I'll come back. I'll fix the roof. I'll pay the arrears. We can make it work." I looked at the small pot of rosemary on my new windowsill. It was thriving in the city light. "That sounds like a wise decision, Dad," I said. "The market is still strong. You'll probably get a good price if you fix that ceiling leak first." You wouldn't consider coming back? We'd give you the suite. No rent. We just need your help getting the place ready for the market." "I can't," I said, and I meant it. "I'm busy building something of my own." "Are you still angry?" he asked, a hint of the old sharpness returning. "Is this all just to punish us?" "I'm not angry at all," I told him, and the truth of it felt like a cool breeze. "I'm just finished. There's a difference. Distance is not anger. It is self-respect. It is the boundary that allows you to breathe." As I hung up the phone, I didn't feel the outrage that had fueled my exit. I felt only peace. The house was just wood and stone. The bedroom was just a square of space. My life, however, was finally my own. I went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and watched the sun set behind the city skyline, perfectly content in my 400 square feet of freedom.